Okay, so if we were to define different levels in the whole agentic capability, so I mean, there is taxonomy of AGI, which is artificial general intelligence, then there is taxonomy of agentic capability. So there are multiple levels and nuances to it, right? So if we were to define what would be the first level, so the first level is definitely going to be the conversationalist, right? The chatbot interface, where the characteristics of this particular agent is that it is doing nothing but passive information retrieval, right? You go type something and it's going to respond to that. It answers your question, it summarizes your text, it does basic translation, it might do some sentence continuation for you, right? So the level 2 of the whole agentic interface is going to be the reasoning system, right? So where, let's say, the core characteristics of this particular agent is human level reasoning, capable of tracing chain of thought and capable of processing chain of thought, but limited to execution, right? Limited to action execution. It can solve complex problem, logical deduction, and it might also give you some strategic advice, right? So it's like your reasoning engine. Now the level 3, so things are getting more complex and more general purpose and more autonomous. So we call it a general agent, right? So previously it was reasoning agent or reasoning system. Now level 3 is nothing but general agent. So this general agent is nothing but, so it has the ability to execute the whole multi-step workflow or in an autonomous fashion. It has access to all the tools like browser, your terminal, your shell, and it can do multi-step planning, right? The very famous example is Manus, closed source enterprise general purpose agent, whereas OpenClaw, which we recently talked about, is your great open source agent, right? So very similar to Manus but open source, right? Now the level 4 is where things get complex, where now you are behaving like an organization. You can be called as a multi-agent system, a complex multi-agent architecture, where you're coordinating with multiple specialized sub-agents, and they are all distributed and in a topology like a hierarchy, and all of these multi sub-specialized agents are working to accomplish a particular goal, just like an organization does, right? So this is also known as swarm intelligence, right? The level 5 is very theoretical, right? Some people also call it artificial super intelligence. So I mean, to name it, just like previously, the previous level was known as multi-agent system. So this level we can name as recursive self-improving agent, right? So the paradigm that we have seen in AlphaGo, right? The capability of a system, the capability of an autonomous AI system to rewrite its own code, do architectural optimization without any human intervention, and maybe come up with its own theories and its own capabilities, its own chain of thought, and new novel discoveries, right? So obviously it is a theoretical state. We have not achieved this state yet. Now, in the previous video, we talked about CloudBot, OpenClaw, MoldBot, right? So here we have also talked about Manus, right? So we know that Manus has great capabilities of building, debugging, and deploying full stack web applications, right? From a single prompt, right? So this also includes setting up backend and obviously front end. So front end is the easy part, but it can also set up the whole backend database, configure your sign-ons, your user authentication, and deploy to custom domains, right? So similarly, since Manus is closed source, similarly we have OpenClaw or CloudBot with very similar capabilities, and obviously these agents can also do deep research, workflow orchestration, and different things, or different, and both of them can target different workflows. But the paradigms and the way they are structured, the architecture, the software architecture, and the economic architecture is completely different. One is closed source and one is open source. One uses a virtual sandbox environment and one uses your local environment like a Mac Mini or a Linux server. So today we're going to talk about both of these agentic autonomous systems and their differences. Okay, so the first difference between both, so let's call them OpenClaw and Manus, right? So Manus has been acquired by Meta and Moltbot has been changed to OpenClaw, right? So OC or OpenClaw and Manus. So the core philosophy behind OpenClaw is that it is the open source agent. It is community driven and decentralized, right? There is no one central authority that governs the whole agent. But whereas Manus is very much proprietary, it is very much polished, and it is very much enterprise. So it is definitely controlled by Meta right now and the whole Manus team, and it is centralized. And one big difference that we have talked about verbally before is the infrastructure layer, right? One is local first, right? So OpenClaw is local first. It runs on your hardware, right? It does not ask you for a monthly subscription, but it asks you to invest in hardware. Whereas the other one, the Manus, is cloud native. It runs on Meta servers, right? So user kind of rents the capability. Whereas here, in case of OpenClaw, user kind of purchases or buys or invests into an hardware. Now, the privacy model, data in case of OpenClaw, data stays on the local machine, right? So everything has access to everything, like your shell, your terminal, right? So you have decent amount of private privacy, but the agent also has high amount of responsibility at the same time. Whereas in case of Manus, the data is processed in the cloud. Privacy depends on the corporate policy of Meta and Manus. Now, the extensibility, right? So Manus used to call itself a general purpose agent, whereas OpenClaw works on the skill instruction, so skill workflow installation, or the skill-based model, where it allows you to have a skill.md file, a skill markdown file. It allows anyone to add any capability in that skill.md file theoretically. Whereas if we talk about Manus, so the capabilities are likely vetted and they're very restricted by Meta's ecosystem rules. Now, this is one of the most crucial part, which is security. So since OpenClaw has access to your whole machine, right, it tries to fully control your whole machine through the shell that you know has access to, like a super user. So users will have to, and users can manage their own security. And there is obviously very high risk of malware. Whereas in case of Manus, you have corporate guardrails, you have enterprise grade guardrails, and it is obviously centralized. So it's the security risk is very moderate if you compare it with OpenClaw. Now, the social layer. So, Manus is simply integratable in Instagram and WhatsApp using third-party APIs or using first-party APIs now that it belongs to Meta. But in case of OpenClaw, the social layer is nothing but Multbook. So we have talked about Multbook and how it has come up like a social network for all of these AI agents where humans are only allowed to enter as an observator, and there is an agentic moderator there. These agents can post, publish, and upvote and downvote. It's like a Reddit social network for all of these AI agents. Now, the last parameter is cost. So the cost, obviously, since it is open source, the cost to OpenClaw is free. You have to invest in your hardware, and obviously, whatever APIs you're going to use, you have to invest in them. Whereas Manus comes with a subscription layer, so it's likely a monthly fee, quarterly fee, for all the advanced features. Thank you. I think in the future videos, we're going to discuss more about Moltbook and OpenClaw, so the whole ecosystem of OpenClaw and how they are saying that there is a paradigm of religion in AI agents. So in the future videos, we're going to discuss that. Thank you.